Funding for Overheard with Evan Smith comes from Hilco Partners, a Texas government affairs consultancy, Claire and Carl Stewart, Christine and Philip Dial, Eller Group, specializing in crisis management, litigation, and public affairs communication, ellergroup.com, Diane Land and Steve Adler, and Carrie and Chris Odo.
I'm Evan Smith. She's an acclaimed documentary filmmaker whose amazing 5-part miniseries on Austin's yogurt shop murders is streaming now on HBO Max. She's Margaret Brown. This is Overheard. A platform and a voice is a powerful thing. You've really turned the conversation around about what leadership should be about.
Are we blowing this? Are we doing the thing we shouldn't be doing by giving in to the attention junkie?
As an industry, we have an obligation to hold ourselves to the same standards that we hold everybody else.
This is Overheard.
Margaret Brown, welcome. It's good to see you.
It's great to see you.
Thank you very much for being here, and congratulations. This is an extraordinary accomplishment, this 5-part series. I hope you feel the love that we're sending your way about this.
It's hard to feel because I was in that world for so long,
right.
And it's a dark world. So, but it does feel good just to get it out there in the world and have people see it.
Yeah, I want to do the timeline, our timeline weirdly, and Austin, and then do the timeline of the crime and the film kind of together. The crime in question was December 6th of 1991.
Yes.
I moved to Austin 2 weeks after the crime. You got to Austin in 1996. So when you got here, what did you know about the crime, or how did you learn about it?
I mean, I think people just talked about it at parties.
Right.
You know, it was sort of in the ether of the city, like a ghost story.
Right.
And it was sort of also like a cautionary tale for young women. Just.
Right.
It was scary.
Yeah. A ghost story in the sense of it being haunting, like in a literal sense, haunting the city and haunting the people who talked about it and thought about it. And my memory at that time, maybe you remember this also, is that there were billboards up.
I remember the billboards.
Right.
Yeah, they were kind of like tattered by then, I feel,
right.
But they were around. And so it was literally hanging over the city.
Literally hanging over
Yes.
over all of us, and it was an unsolved crime. So Eliza Thomas, Amy Ayers, Jennifer Harbison, Sarah Harbison, let's say their names, right? I mean, we always talk about the 4 girls. Let's show them the respect to say their names. 13 to 17 years old. That night in the I Can't Believe It's Yogurt shop, they were shot execution style. All were sexually assaulted.
All but one, I believe.
All but one sexually assaulted. The shop was set on fire. And the sprinklers went off, so there was fire damage, there was water. It kind of made it a hard crime scene to...
Yeah, there's no way to really fingerprint a flood and a fire.
Right.
They tried, but...
This was a horrible, horrific, scary crime.
The worst thing you can think of happening to someone in your family.
Right. And then a couple days later, a kid is picked up at the shopping mall nearby with a gun.
Yes.
His name is Maurice Pierce.
Yes.
And in the course of him attempting to get himself out of that, we believe, he confesses to this crime, and he also implicates 3 of his friends in this crime.
He doesn't really confess, but he sort of implicates all of them at the scene. And
all 4 of them.
Yes.
Right. Except he gets details of the crime wrong.
Correct.
Right? And the gun that he has does not match the ballistics from the crime scene. But the names of the other boys, Maurice Pierce is the one who was arrested. Forrest Wellborn, Michael Scott, and Robert Springsteen is the 4th one. Those 4 are not charged.
They're let off at the time. I mean, I should say that Hector Polanco got confessions from other people.
Say who he was.
He was a cop at APD who was known for getting confessions.
Austin Police Department, right.
Yes, at Austin Police Department.
And but a number of people actually had confessed to this, right?
Correct.
I mean, one of the great stories of this story is the number of people who made false confessions or coerced confessions in the course of the many years that this case was unsolved, right?
Yeah.
So that's in that pardon me, is in 1991, sort of right after the crime is over. Then you have to go ahead a couple of years to 1999, when the 4 who were implicated back then, not charged, their names come back up into the conversation. Talk about that.
Yeah, a different cop got assigned to the case, and he came back to that, and he was able to get confessions out of 2 of them, Robert Springsteen and Michael Scott.
Right, and those are the 2 who were ultimately charged and convicted.
Right.
Of the crime. Scott is sent away, life without parole. Springsteen is sent to death row for this crime. Forrest Wellborn ends up not,
He spent about 4 months in jail.
right, but he's ultimately no billed, as they say, right? And Maurice Pierce, interestingly, he's never charged.
Well, he was held in jail for 3 years, though.
But ultimately not,
True. Yeah, I mean, but
Not
both of
charged
them
in-
never
right.
confessed,
Right.
but the confession was all they had.
right. And so years pass, as you say, Scott and Springsteen are behind bars, are incarcerated, and then ultimately their convictions are overturned.
Yes. The Supreme Court changed, like, that you couldn't sort of have someone talk. Their names had been redacted in the court case, and so the Supreme Court ruled that you couldn't use that against another person. So they had both used each other's accounts, even though it was redacted. So they were both let free.
Right. Ultimately, they're exonerated of these crimes. Again.
Except for the city never really fully exonerated them.
Right.
There was still a cloud over all 4 boys.
But the point is, the crime is not solved. I mean, as much as one of the interesting things about this movie, about this series of episodes, and the telling of this story, is that it is not so much about the crime as it is about memory and grief and trauma and suffering and loss. It's what the families of the victims suffered.
Yes.
It's what the families of the alleged perpetrators and themselves, what they, the perpetrators themselves, suffered over all this time.
Right. No, I mean, I think it was. I think the thing that was interesting to me is that this was something that just touched so many people,
Yeah.
and it wasn't just the family members, but it was also the community was so touched by this. Just, I mean, moving here and feeling it so palpably. I can't believe you moved there 2 weeks later. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That must have been weird. But I think I don't really work in the world of true crime so much, and in trying to figure out how to tell this story, it was just rabbit hole and rabbit hole and rabbit hole,
Yeah.
you know. And but the only thing I could think of that was worth, in a way, hanging my hat on was thinking about how do people deal with the worst thing that could ever happen to you? Like,
Yeah.
is this like, I don't know if this sounds crass, but like an instruction manual in a way to deal with pain and grief, because we all might not, as humans, have something this awful happen to us, but everyone suffers. And I think that was what got me through it in a way, thinking something I make might be helpful to learn how to deal with.
Right. And ultimately, that's what this is about. It is not a whodunit, right? It's not so much concerned with who did it, because in fact, the first 4 episodes of this,
we didn't know.
we don't know who did it. So let's just say that Maurice Pierce gets into a scuffle with police in 2010 after Scott and Springsteen are released, and he's ultimately killed in the course of that scuffle. So Maurice Pierce he passes in 2010. Beyond that, this crime remains unsolved. It's the thing literally and figuratively hanging over the heads of this city
Yes.
and of law enforcement for several decades. At some point in there, in 21, 22, you come into focus as the director of this film. What is the origin story of this series, this miniseries?
Well, I think Beth, who's here somewhere, Beth Garabrandt, and her husband, Mickey Stanley, they had just moved to Austin, and they brought to their friends Emma Stone and Dave McCary the story, and they decided to bring that to A24,
Right.
and A24 brought it to HBO, and then Beth, Mickey, Emma, and Dave brought it to me
How'd they come to you?
through my manager.
Yeah, but what was it that interested them about you, or what
Probably
was it
that I
about
li-
it?
You'll have to ask Beth.
What was it
But,
about this project that interested you?
Well, a few things. One is that Pamela Koloff, who's sitting in the audience, told me that this is the craziest crime in Texas and there's so many rabbit holes. And she said this thing, she said, you can't tell this story in less than 10 episodes. And I kind of took that as a challenge.
Did you think at any point about it being a more conventional feature-length documentary as opposed to a series?
The job was literally make it in 4 episodes. That was the network comes to you and says, this is a story, this is a limited series. Right. And then we got the 5th when it got solved. But I think also there was a wealth of archival footage, and I saw the footage, and it was like watching a real life Twin Peaks, you know? It was the hair and the vibe of it, and it was this Austin that was gone now.
Remember, the Austin of then was a quarter of the size it is now, right?
And I didn't live here then, so to me it was like looking at this place I'd only thought about but never seen. So it was very intoxicating in that way. But then I met the families, and it changed for me because, you know, thinking in your mind like, oh, I'm going to tell it like Twin Peaks is really different when you then encounter the level of trauma and grief, and then it sits in your body in a different way.
Right.
And then I was like, oh, I can't.
It was clear to you what this actually.
It wasn't clear at first. At first, I was still like getting. It took a long time to just even get my head around the crime because, like I said before, there were so many rabbit holes and there were so many theories, and the whole just sort of atmosphere of it was pretty overwhelming. So I didn't really realize it was, and also I was traveling with another movie, so I wasn't even like fully present. But it wasn't, it was sort of, it took me a minute to realize, no, I have to make it about the thing that was present the first day. My first interview was with Bob Ayers, and the father of Amy Ayers. And the youngest victim. And he said to me, I sat down, and the first thing he said was how many years, months, days it had been since his daughter had been murdered. And I remember just feeling in my stomach like, oh, like this is gonna, because you feel a presence off of someone of what they're going through, and I could feel it. And I realized, like, I realized in that moment, well, I don't know what this is yet, but it's not the way I thought.
Yeah. You produced this movie or direct this film over 3.5 years. It takes 3.5 years to do, right?
Yes.
It premieres at South by Southwest in early 2025.
Yes.
Ultimately lands on HBO Max for all of us to see it late summer of August of 2025. Mm-hmm. Unbeknownst necessarily to us or to you at the time, this case picks up steam during the years that you're working on the film because a police detective named Dan Jackson is assigned to the Cold Case Squad in 2022. And the first day he gets a file, and it's the cold case file for the Yogurt murders.
I don't know if it's the first day.
Well, the lore is that it's the first day.
It was the first day. Okay.
He happens to be right here.
Yes.
Right.
Sorry.
So he gets the Yogurt Shop murders cold case file and is working on it over the couple of years that you're actually making this film.
Yes.
And then in June and July of that summer of 25, he submits a bullet casing to a national database, a bullet casing from a drain in the yogurt shop on that day. He submits a bullet casing to a national database, and lo and behold, gets a hit.
Yes.
The case begins to move.
Now I'm feeling like he should be up here, not me, because these are like Dan questions.
But ultimately, what ends up happening is they identify through his work and the work that happens after, identify the person who actually did this crime after all these years.
Yes.
Through both ballistics and DNA on the day of the crime.
Yeah,
and
so
it's
Dan's
a serial
keeping
killer.
this secret
Right.
while the show is coming out and everything, and he knows that something might be coming down the pipe.
Right.
Maybe.
Which is extraordinary. And then they announced this in September of 25 publicly, 4 days before the two of you have coffee.
Yes.
And he hints
4 days
to you
after.
After.
Yeah.
4 days after but this is before it's announced publicly. He hints to you that something may be coming.
I don't know if I would call it hinting, because what happened is we had coffee because I was about to leave town to work on another movie, and we had coffee a lot because we were always talking about it, and he was in the film, and there were a lot of times when he would say something might be happening or I might have and so I kind of got used to hearing that.
But this was different.
Yeah. But this time he was fidgety. He was kind of like, and you know, the kind of like spidey sense of being a filmmaker, I was like, is there something you're not telling me?
Yeah.
And he's just like, clearly wants to say something, but something was holding him back.
Yeah.
And so I said, you know, I'm leaving with my dog in my car and driving out of town. Should I call Alice, the producer? Do I need to get money? And he was like, no, you should leave. And he said, because if something happens, I have to tell the families first. And I was like, you have to tell the families first. You've never said that before. You know, there was like going through my head, but he
Yeah.
said I could go. He said I could go. So I trusted him because I could tell, like, I didn't want to push him because I could tell he needed to, whatever it was. And also, there had been so many times he had maybe had something, so I was just going to let it.
Yeah.
And also, I needed to go make another movie.
So you did go.
I left.
And then turned around and came back.
I left my dog with my parents and flew back to Austin.
Right, and within a couple of days, you were shooting a 5th episode of this to
2
deal
days.
2 days to deal with what now turns out to be the resolution of it.
Yes.
That 5th episode is amazing.
Thank you.
It's emotional to see those now grown men, you know, who've never going to get their lives back. Finally, at the end of this, and the families, right? I mean, it really is gripping.
Thank you.
Trauma is right. Ultimately, what happened is the city comes to a settlement with the families of a family of Maurice Pierce and with the 3 wrongly accused.
I think it's still being worked out, but yes, for
Yeah.
$35 million.
It's amazing. Well, this if people have not seen it, it is an extraordinary accomplishment. These 5 parts, and it's a great story. And even if you think you know the story, you don't know the story. Why are you a documentary filmmaker and not a feature filmmaker?
I don't know that I am one or the other. I think it's that there's something about the adrenaline of documentary filmmaking and
Yeah.
sort of waking up. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's a painter recently, and he said, don't you know, like, when you start, like, what something is about? And I said, no, that's actually the thing I love about my job, is because if I knew what it was about, why would I even make it, you know?
If you were making a traditional Hollywood feature, you would
Yeah.
probably have a little bit more of a sense on the front end of what it's
Well,
about.
maybe. I mean, not if you're John Cassavetes, but like I think like it depends on what kind of filmmaker you are and how open you are. But yeah, I would say traditionally narrative films,
Yeah.
you have a script, you know.
So you've done 4 feature-length documentaries before the Yogurt Chutners. Be Here to Love Me, the Townes Van Zandt film, one of the great music films of all time, I think. That was 2004.
4, yes.
And then you do The Order of Myths, which is about segregated Mardi Gras in your hometown of Mobile, Alabama. That's in 2008. That one won a Peabody Award.
Yes.
Right. And then you did a film about the BP spill and the aftermath of that, Deepwater Horizon, that was called The Great Invisible. That was in 2014. That was nominated for an Emmy. And then you did an extraordinary film called Descendant, about the descendants of the last slaves on the last slave ship that came over to America. Also has an Alabama connection. That one was shortlisted for an Academy Award. Right. Look at you. Classic underachiever. I mean, every one of these films has been like a 10 out of 10. And that's a very hard thing to pull off. So I'm just wondering, like, how did it happen?
I mean, it's
What
because
is
I
it?
know Pam Koloff.
What has happened over the course of your career? I mean, you've really picked well, I think, good subjects, but also obviously you've executed at an extraordinarily high level. This is a hard thing to pull off.
I mean, I think that I have a great team. I think I would be remiss to say, because I work with the same people over and over, and we're like a family, and they bring themselves fully as people to each project. And it's kind of, I mean, it's not the same exact people every time, but I mean, you know, Justin Hennard, who lives here in Austin, I've worked with him. He's my sound person, and I've worked with him. He's also a great shooter. I've worked with him since the Townes movie.
Right. Well, it takes a village, and you're very modest and very
but
generous
I would
to give
also
those
say
people.
it's true.
Right, yeah.
I would say that that I have I could never. We made that 5th episode, which is an hour and 35 minutes, in 6 months. I could never do that on my own.
Right, without
There's
help.
no
Right.
way without having a team who's used to working together, who's dedicated to one thing. I remember, like, when we found out that Robert Bashir's had been found, Alice Henty, the producer, called me, and we didn't even know if HBO was giving us money yet. And she's like, "Whatever happens, I'm in." Like that's what my team is like.
Right.
Like they want to make stuff that challenges them and moves them.
Right, and every one of those films, I mean, several of them, two, and you argue that the Deepwater Horizon film is also kind of the Bayou, so kind of three
Yeah.
are set in the South. Like there are some narrative threads
And the
that
Towns
go
movie.
in the Towns movie, and they all
Yeah.
kind of go through them.
Yeah.
But they're also different films.
Yes.
That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that that's the cool thing about documentaries is you don't have to, there's no formula for a documentary.
Right.
You can change the rules, about what a story is.
Yeah.
And I think you can't get bored if you can keep changing the rules.
Yeah.
So
It's a hard time, though, you would acknowledge, to do documentary film right now. Like, Hollywood.
it's always hard.
I mean, there's
When is it easy?
There's consolidation in Hollywood. The streamers have their algorithms that they care
Sure.
about. The theatrical releases.
They
are-
love that first 7 minutes.
Right. I mean,
yeah, very important.
Theatrical releases are somewhat determined right now. What theaters are going to show is determined by what's going to bring in the most money. There are questions around protections in the First Amendment, like documentary film is actually in that conversation about all the infringements upon all of our rights. Like there is a lot. It's tough, right? A tough environment right now.
Yes, it's scary.
Right. But you're able to get the films that you want to get made.
Sure, today. I mean, I think the landscape is changing, but I feel like it's always changing. So it doesn't really scare me. It probably should
Yeah.
scare me. I mean, a lot of my friends aren't working right now, so
Yeah.
that's scary.
And, since we're sitting in a PBS studio, I'll also acknowledge that the defunding of public media, which has been a huge financial enabler of documentary film, that's yet another
It's huge.
yet another
Yeah.
element about
There's
this.
just so in the United States, like it's not like other countries, and it's
Yeah.
really hard to get funding here.
Did you know that you wanted to be, regardless of the kind of film, that you wanted to be a filmmaker from the time you were a kid?
I always knew I wanted to be a storyteller because my
Yeah.
dad's a songwriter, and I mean, my mom always tells this story in fifth grade. We had some day where I think maybe it was Halloween, but we had to dress up as. No, it wasn't Halloween. We had to dress up like what we wanted to be, and I dressed up like a writer. And the way I indicated that was by wearing my clothes all inside out, because my dad was so like, in his own world. I was like, well, that must be what being a creative is like. Is you're just, And I think my shirt's on.
I think it's on.
Yeah.
It's
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I've heard that one before, but that was actually good. You went to Brown University. You went to NYU Film School, got an MFA, and it seems like you were just launched immediately.
Didn't feel that way, Evan. Yeah.
But look at what you've accomplished though in the short time that you've been doing this. It's really pretty remarkable.
Thank you. I mean, it feels like working. I don't know. I PA'd on rap videos, and I worked my way up. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think that. I don't know. Growing up in Alabama has its perks. I seem to keep going back there to mine my
From a story
hometown.
standpoint.
Yeah, from a story standpoint.
There's always
yeah.
stuff to do.
Yeah.
So in the remaining time we have, you're working on something, but you can't talk
I
about
can't
it.
talk about it.
Yeah. Do you typically have one or two or a couple things in the works that you're thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, weirdly, like during making the Yogurt Shop Murders, I felt really creatively inspired. So my next thing is it has a lot of narrative elements in it, and I think I'm actually in it too, which I don't know, that's new for me. So I think that's also what I love about documentary again, is that that's different than anything I've ever done. So
You're in it as kind of the interrogator or the investigator?
well, I'm just in it on screen more than any of my other
Right,
films.
you were actually in the 5th episode of
Yes.
the Yogurt Shop Murders. Also, we heard
But
your
a voice,
We
just
heard
my
your
voice,
but
yeah.
we heard your voice in a way that we really had not.
It's more in the 5th
Yeah.
because I think that I'm so curious about asking everyone, because it takes such a turn and everyone feels differently than you think they're going
Yeah.
to. It's such a look at like how humans, and I think it made sense to leave my voice in because I think I was sort of the sit-in for the audience who might be having the same thoughts.
No, I mean, I think that was exactly what I was thinking, was I'd be asking that question.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
would be reacting to what the person said by asking that follow-up question. So why not actually just have you
Yeah.
on camera doing that? So this thing that you can't talk about, when will we see it?
I don't know.
Sneaky that you can't answer. Look, it's nice to see somebody who you respect, and I have enormous respect for you, be successful at what she does, and to get the accolades that you've gotten for this. And so let me just say how glad I am for you, and congratulations on your success.
Oh, thank you.
Margaret Brown, give her a big hand. Thank you very much.
In my mind, it was about three things. It was about how Dan solved the crime and the kind of intricacies of that, which is sort of like the first 30 minutes of the episode. The second part is about how the families responded to having something go, and not just the families, like Claire Huey, who's the filmmaker, who's in all first 4 episodes, how people, the other previous investigators, how you go from not knowing to knowing what that does to your brain. That was so interesting. And then the third part of the episode is about what happens to the boys who were wrong. I shouldn't call them boys, they're men, who were wrongfully accused. And because that was, when I heard that Robert Bashirs was found, that was the first thought I had, was about, well, what about them?
Visit our website at austinpbs.org/overheard to find invitations to interviews, Q&As with our audience and guests, and an archive of past episodes.
If you've seen the 5th episode, he had done this to 4 other people, the same thing, except he let them live. And I think for me, in my mind, like the fact that he had a ruse where he could do that, and we know that he did that, is pretty convincing to me. He always worked alone.
Funding for Overheard with Evan Smith comes from Hilco Partners, a Texas government affairs consultancy, Claire and Carl Stewart, Christine and Philip Dial, Eller Group, specializing in crisis management, litigation, and public affairs communication, ellergroup.com, Diane Land and Steve Adler, and Carrie and Chris Odo.